My name is Carol Saunders, and I serve as a member of the worship team. Some things I love about this congregation are the many varied places to offer skills or encourage interests right off. I'm thinking of the book club or the OWL program, then the garden and the building committee, maybe the men's group or choir. I love how we bring our whole selves to UUCB. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder, and I want to take a moment to extend a very warm welcome to everyone who's visiting for the first time. If you're joining us online, fill out a visitor form in the link in the description, and we'd love to connect with you. To give you some idea of what we're about, let me tell you about our mission. We say that here we connect bravely, deepen spiritually, embody justice, and always love. What we mean is that this community is inviting you into our shared time together today, but it's also inviting you into a way of life, a way of being in this world that may transform you. We want to grow as individuals and to welcome more people into this community, and we want to help you in your personal dream to make the world and your life better. So, there you go, our church in a nutshell. On Saturday, October 12th, from 4 to 6, Nicole Delormier and Nick Hartman are co-hosting a food drive and fundraiser for Harvest Hope Pantry. Harvest of Hope is a Boulder nonprofit that serves everyone who comes to the door. Bring non-perishable food items and personal items and gather for hors d'oeuvres and non-alcoholic beverages at Meadows on the Parkway Clubhouse here in Boulder. Find a flyer with directions and details at the front desk. And Rachel Peterson from the Climate Action team has a special invitation.
Good morning. My name is Rachel, and I'm part of the Climate Action Ministry team. So here at UUCB, we'll be hosting a Climate Justice Revival Weekend on October 19th and 20th. This fall, more broadly, over 300 congregations will be hosting these UU Climate Justice Revivals to collectively reimagine a brighter future. Through conversations, worship, and advocacy, congregations will work together to realize climate justice and collective liberation in our communities. As part of that, here at UUCB on Saturday, October 19th, our congregation will host a workshop for adults around that theme, as well as having youth programming available that day. On Sunday, October 20th, our worship service will also be focused on climate justice, and following that service, we'll engage in an advocacy hour in solidarity with other UU congregations around the country. This will be a multi-generational event, so please join us for conversations, worship, advocacy, and 2 spirit-filled days. You can get more information about the Climate Justice Revival if you have any questions at the Climate Action Ministry table in the Sky Room during today's coffee hour after the service. And because space is limited for the Saturday workshop, we are asking folks to pre-register for that. So I'll be at the table in the Sky Room if you have questions, and also with some with the ability to register. So see me then if you're interested. Thanks.
Our covenant is the promise we make to each other about how we will be together in community. It is simple, it is demanding, and in person or online, please join us as we speak aloud. We gather in fellowship to speak truth to each other, to reach out and touch one another, to care with each other, and Each week when we gather, we light our chalice, just as 1,000 other congregations do in each week around the country. It is a symbol of our Unitarian Universalist past, present, and future. It is a visible reminder of our interconnection. And I'd like to invite Joseph Anton to light this morning's chalice.
Hello and good morning. Good morning. Based on the theme that I was presented, I wrote words, I have a dream still. I am listening deeply. I am dreaming forever. This is my American dream and the people and names that influenced it. Felix and Bernadine. My parents raised 6 kids from El Paso. I am the youngest. They educated us in parochial schools, on a pharmacy, and a second-grade teacher income. And yet, all 6 of us graduated from UT El Paso. Go Miners. Dad was a U.S. Navy medic in World War II in the South Pacific. This caused his PTSD, and in 1996, he took his own life. So that means a lot to me, and what it means to put your life on the line for your country. John, Bobby, Reverend Martin, Eva, Gloria, and Shirley. From 1963 to 1968, on a black and white television with just 3 channels, I watched all of my heroes get murdered. When they shot Martin in Memphis, I then committed my life to MLK's dream and to nonviolence at the age of 10. Soon, my eldest sister, Eva Ross, one of this nation's first sex equity instructors, inspired me by teaching Miss Steinem's philosophy and delivered in U.S. Congress by Miss Gloria Chisholm of New York. I have been a feminist since 1970. Brother Amity. Brother Amity Long was our religion professor at Cathedral my junior and senior high school years. In 1976, he organized all 76 of us to visit all 9 congregations in the city of El Paso. This single act transformed me to believe the creator of all of us is truly only one God. Ingeborg, Bella, and Julio. Ingeborg from Berlin discovered my dance skills at age 10, and I performed the Nutcracker twice for her. This led me to a dusty gym in Fort Davis, Texas, where Dr. Bella from Argentina gave me a scholarship at Lamar University in Beaumont, Texas, where I studied under Dr. de Bittencourt, who was from Columbia. Don the Bear and Dr. Milliken at UTEP. In 1996, in the 1966 men's basketball tournament, Coach Don Haskins made history at UTEP by starting 5 black players for the first time ever, beating Kentucky to win our national title. Later, my degree is in a BBA in marketing, and the new department chair, Dr. Milliken, was 100% visually impaired. He inspired me that anything is possible. President Clinton and Senator Pete. In the 90s, I owned 2 businesses, a customs brokerage and a bonded warehouse in Albuquerque. As president of the International Trade Council, I worked to elect President Clinton, but I also voted for Senator Domenici as a Republican. As a result, we have the Santa Teresa border crossing. Lastly, Cynthia, Maddie, and the white butterfly children. My beloved late wife, Cynthia, and I were married for 22 years. Our daughter Maddie, after the second best soccer performance of her career, came out as LGBTQ, and we embraced it. Cynthia died in 2020 after 5 years of younger onset dementia, and her mother, Sharon, 5 months later. Maddie and her partner, Lavender, let me collect myself here, live the RV life and are currently in Oregon. Her music is on Spotify, and she bills herself as a vocal artist, instrumentalist, producer, and creative human. That's my daughter's plug. All of you here know me from Teepee Raisers, and soon, and as well as the Capital Campaign Committee. That's what I've been working on. But at Teepee Raisers, my new adopted kids are Trayton, Orville, Grandpa, and Julie, otherwise known as the White Butterfly Children. They are members of the Gen 7 children, who together with Maddie are the wisdom keepers of this generation. From that website, I give you this quote. In the late 1880s, the great warrior of the Oglala Lakota, Crazy Horse, spoke of a vision in which healing would take place from the trauma and devastation that started at the time of European migration. In this vision, he prophesied that the seventh generation would be the generation of healing, in which all colors of mankind come together. If any of you are interested, please join us at the Teepee Raisers Hub in Lafayette, the weekend of service on October 11th through the 13th. We would be glad to have you and have you join our Nagi Circle. In honor of those named, and for the light of our community and peace in the world, I light today's chalice. Thank you so very much.
I read years ago, I forget where, maybe James Baldwin says, some people are your relatives, the ones you're related to, and other people are your ancestors, your family, the ones out of whose values you create yourself. Thinking on that, hearing all those names, and the story and the thread that each of us have followed to be here. Years ago, as an intern preparing for ministry, I met with a couple who I was marrying, one of the very first weddings I ever did. I met in my office, which on Sundays was a religious education classroom. My desk in one corner of it. We talked under posters of our shared values and the universal ethical teachings of world religions. They weren't part of that congregation, or any congregation. They weren't Unitarian Universalists, but as it often happened, unchurched folks found their way to this tradition, wanting a spiritual container that could hold them in that moment without telling them what to believe. And we welcomed them. We talked for a long time about their story and how they met and what their whole family structure was and what vows mean and what their hopes for the future were. All the regular wedding planning stuff. And then at the end I asked, as I always do, what questions do you have for me? And they asked, why are you going into ministry? Which was not, I think, a reflection on the conversation. They seemed to ask it very generously. I didn't then have a polished answer. I started slow. I said, well, the work is important because I think that our lives take this constant refocusing back on what's really important. It's easy to be distracted. The to-do list becomes your whole life when it should be a tool in service of your whole life. I said it's easy to turn aside from service into self-interest and from compassion into narrowness. It's easy to turn aside from permanent things and focus on the temporary. It's easy to forget the immensity of the world and only see how big we are in our own lives. What I told them wasn't really about why I was doing the work. It was answering the question underneath that question, which is, why religious community? Why this odd, old-fashioned thing called church, where even the name is loaded with whatever bad experiences you had before? I told them, at least in my memory of it, I told them, I want to be reminded of how life and death intertwine. I want to be reminded of love and loss and beginnings and endings, of speech and silence, and the way the ordinary and the transcendent are both happening right at the same time. Because those are the things that are real in this world. Those are the things that give us meaning, that ground our lives and can carry us forward all the way through. At the heart of things, that kind of entanglement with love and wonder and compassion, curiosity and hope. Those are guideposts that don't move in the middle of a constantly moving world. And it's not that I have all the answers to that and need to tell you what they are. It's that I want to be part of a community where those are the questions. Those are the values and the journey, the wondering that we're all doing together. Not a community of like-minded people, but a community of like-hearted people. That's part of what this ritual does for us each week, gathering in this room, singing and sitting in silence, greeting and talking and connecting and placing stones. We're marking the passing time and feeling it moving around us and growing, and being invited to confront the same old questions again and again. Where do we find hope? How do we endure a season of uncertainty, of waiting, of not knowing what's coming? The work of spiritual practice, in part, is having your insides match your outsides, of crafting your action and intention to match your aspirations. And that's what we keep returning. That's the work that we're doing right now. That's why y'all are working just as hard in this hour as I am. So come in. Come into this place which we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths and fears and anxieties and loves and hopes. For here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you're called into being. Come into this place. We can heal and be healed. We can forgive and be forgiven. Where the ordinary is sanctified and the human is celebrated and the compassionate is expected. Come in, because together we make this a holy place. When you rise in body or spirit, let's sing that out. Sing out our wondering and our hoping and our loving.
So good morning. We are singing hymn 1003, Where Do We Come From? And it's a little bit complicated today because most of you know what you're doing. First, we're going to put you into 4 parts. And I think, 4 parts. So it's your part number 1 over here on the right. Part number 2 is all the way in the back of the sanctuary. Part 3 is here, and part 4 is here. Then what we're going to do is we're going to sing each of the parts as a whole. I will do the first, and then you all come in. And finally, we're all going to be singing together with part 1 coming in first, and then I'll bring in part 2 and part 3 and part 4. And finally, we're going to singularly come out, and I'll tell you when part 1 leaves, part 2 leaves, part 3 leaves, and part 4 leaves. And in the end, But it's a little bit complicated in the end, because in the end we will all be singing part 3. So it is choose your own adventure, but kind of directed, and you all know it, and it will be fine. So here we go. I'll start, and then you all sing after me. Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Everybody? Where do we come from? 3. Mystery, mystery. Life is a riddle and a mystery. Mystery, mystery. Life is a riddle and a mystery. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? All right, ones, let's go. Number ones. Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? 2s, get ready. Where? 1s, keep going. We come from. Where? Okay, number 3s, get ready. Mystery, mystery. Life is a riddle and a mystery. Mystery, mystery. Okay, 4s, we're getting ready. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we? Okay, number 1s, drop out. Where do we? Number 2s, drop out. Mystery. Where do we come from? Where do we come from? All right, number 4s. You're now out. Mystery. And everyone, mystery. Life is a riddle and a mystery. Mystery, mystery. Life is a riddle and a mystery. One more time. Mystery, mystery. Life is a riddle and a mystery. Awesome.
Y'all did so good. Will you join with me in a spirit of prayer and meditation? Prayer and meditation, moving our attention or our focus into that space, it's an important thing, it's a deliberate thing. It can be a serious thing, but it doesn't have to be a solemn thing. To move into prayer and meditation is also to remember delight and joy and riddle and mystery. To move into that space of prayer and meditation is to make room to listen to all of what's on your heart, to listen among or beyond or within yourself. We practice that because it's really hard. It's hard work to be able to do that when attention is pulled away in 1,000 different directions, when the demands of living are constant, when traffic stinks and the dishes pile up. We practice in this moment to be able to do that movement, that unseen, that internal door that opens in your heart or spirit or soul. Remembering that we're little parts of something bigger. Whatever words you use to describe that. We'll be together in silence for a few moments in that intention, in that heart space. Amen. Our commitment to connect bravely with one another means we're called to be glad with those who rejoice and weep with those who mourn. So each week we set aside this time in the service to make visible in ritual the joys and the sorrows that are shaping our lives. And for those meeting in person, when the music begins, I invite you come forward as you feel moved. We'll start with the back and side, and then the front. And silently take a stone, place it in the earth to symbolize your joys and cares, taking their place in a larger whole. The practice isn't just to do that for yourself. The practice isn't just placing the stone. It's not even just finding that place inside yourself where you can connect with your joys and sorrows. The practice also is to do that in community, to know as you're walking, moving, holding that stone, to know as you're sitting and hearing the soft sound of the room moving around you, that everyone else is just as real and full and complicated, just as weighted down by grief and lifted up by joy as you are yourself. And that's the practice too. I'll place a first two stones. First to say, my wife, Reverend Terry, had eye surgery 2 weeks ago. She's recovering well. She was sorry she couldn't be here last week with y'all, but she's doing good. And a second stone to share the news that Bill Ballou died quietly and peacefully last Sunday afternoon with his wife Sharon and his sister at his bedside. And a memorial will be planned for later this year. For all the blessings and concerns that we carry, we hold this compassionate space with love. Please come forward as you feel moved. On October 7th, 1 year ago tomorrow, more than 1,100 Israelis were murdered in a senseless, pointless, compassionless attack, and the military response in its absurd scale and profound indifference to civilian life has been just as senseless and pointless and compassionless. And 1 year later, an ending, a resolution, a lasting peace seems not just challenging to implement, but difficult to imagine. Our work in this house is not to formulate policy solutions or assess strategy. Neither is it our task to sink into despair, hopelessness, nihilism. Our work instead is to remember who we are and what we are about. To speak reality when the world is locked in ideology. To give voice to grief when the world is in denial. And to name our hope, which is not a naive optimism that justice is, of course, coming, but something narrower and realer, merely that it is possible love will win. And that bare possibility is enough reason to get to work. The Rabbi Arthur Waskow offers a litany of ashes and stones for a time such as this. I'll begin, and I invite you to respond with the italic words. For vibrant lives, suddenly, shamelessly sacrificed. For the lives that continue, haunted by the pain of absence. For the images forever seared into our memories. For the charred visions of peace and the dry taste of fear. For all that has been destroyed in the fire of anger. For deaths justified by arrogant patriotism or fanatic faith. We lift up the ashes of our shame. Spirit of love among and beyond and within us, hear our plea that these ashes make fertile the soil of the future, that they nourish seeds of loving kindness. For the ways humanity pursues violence, not understanding. For ethnic, religious, and national boundaries to our compassion. We lift up the stones of our fear. For the ways we cast blame and create enemies. We lift up the stones of our self-righteousness. Dissolving the ashes of our grief and the hardness of our hearts. O cleansing waters, wash us all towards justice and peace. when we lived in Minneapolis, a friend invited me into a small circle of other guys, most of us in our early 30s, to gather monthly for a few hours just of deep check-in with each other. I had a small child then, and life was full and busy and hectic and overwhelming, as you can imagine if you've ever had one or seen one. But then again, life was full and hectic, overwhelming before I had kids too. We rotated through different living rooms while our spouses gave us space, and we told each other every time how we were actually in fact doing. We told each other things that we didn't know about ourselves until we had said them out loud. We talked about love and loss and hope and relationship and failure, our own and our family. We talked about all the things that men don't really talk about in this culture. All the things most folks don't have space to talk about. That was the work. That was the spiritual practice, sharing vulnerably and listening deeply, that kept me grounded and connected when my children were small, when work was busy and life was relentless. That circle of trust kept me in touch with my soul, with myself, because we were sharing our soul stories instead of our ego stories. Ego stories are the ones about how great you are. Ego stories, they're heroic when you've been successful and affirmed, when you are in control of your life. The high spots, the ego stories are highly crafted, linear stories where we are in charge of our life, and every event led directly to the next one by our own planning. I had a good decade, I had a fine, successful decade in corporate America, and I learned and coached other people there as they were applying for jobs how to tell the story of your life as if every moment that had ever happened to you led inevitably to this position you were interviewing for. Those are stories that do not really sustain us in times of suffering. It's not that those things aren't true. It's not that success isn't a fact of life. It's that failure is also a fact of life, and loss, pain, suffering. That's real true. Soul stories are the story underneath the ego story, the one with the thread of truth running through them, the ones that honor the shadow parts of yourself as well as the light, the suffering as well as the gladness, the twists and turns when our best laid plans were undone by the unexpected, and our great successes sort of happened by accident. Soul stories are unafraid of change and fear and loss and failure and shame. Soul stories are unafraid of mystery and passion and ecstasy. Soul stories are the ones that years later, this still doesn't make sense to you. It's soul stories that we want the people that we love the most to know. The things that we hold on to in the hardest times are these stories, the things we think on facing the end of living. And music and poetry and art sometimes say all of these more direct. The poet Mark Nepo writes this called Understory. He says, "I've been watching stars rely on the darkness they resist, and fish struggle with and against the current, and hawks glide faster when their wings don't move. Still, I keep retelling what happens till it comes out the way I want." We try to be the main character when it is our point of view that keeps us from the truth. The sun has its story no curtain can stop. It's true the only way beyond the self is through it. The only way to listen to what can never be said is to quiet our need to steer the plot. When jarred by life, we might unravel the story we tell ourselves and discover the story we are in, the one that keeps telling us. Soul stories are whole stories. They don't leave out some part of you. And I don't mean by soul a theological idea. This is poetry when I say soul, not theology. I mean the heart, the center, the totality of you, the one who isn't all good and perfect and pure and certainly isn't all bad and terrible and unworthy. The whole of who you are, that's what I mean. And I have not met a person with a beautiful soul who got there by placing some part of themselves in exile and by placing this part of me that I don't like, we're going to lock it in the closet and lean hard against the door, and then I'm going to perform myself nicer. A person who, in fear or self-protection from trauma, walled away their emotions. Of course we do it. Of course that's the safe thing to do. And there are times and periods in your life or relationships where you need to do that to take care of yourself. It's not that that's a bad thing automatically. But then, when you can, when it's safe, the work is integration. That's why I return regularly to the words in the call to worship this morning. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, your fears and anxieties, your loves and your hopes. For here you need not hide nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. That integration work, it doesn't mean, I hope I'm not saying that you're supposed to be unboundaried all the time. If you feel mad, shout at people. No, it's not that. And I'm not trying to say that at every moment in your whole life in the world, you're supposed to be in deep-rooted, wholehearted, totally open relationships with everyone. Sometimes you just need to go to work and do work, right? It's not about a total unguardedness in every respect. It's not even, I think, fundamentally about the behavior towards others. What I'm really talking about is a relationship with yourself. What is that relationship with yourself? Are there parts of you that are so scary or overwhelming or shameful or frightening that you have locked those parts away and are vigorously pretending they do not exist? What would it look like to face those things? What would it look like? What support do you need? What love and trust and help? Who do you need around you to listen you into speech like that circle of men did for each other years ago? What made it possible for us then was a circle of trust, like a small group ministry. And that circle then worked a lot like the Soul Matters groups here. In fact, like many of the small groups work here. Parker Palmer, the Quaker author, talks about the parameters for that sort of circle, that sort of relationship like this. He says, there is, first and foremost, a simple rule: no fixing, no saving, no advising, no setting each other straight. And that is hard work for people, he means all of us, accustomed to straightening each other out. He says, once I introduced the rule at the start of a long-term circle and someone blurted out, "Oh, then what are we going to do for the next 2 years?" In the face of our deepest questions, the kind that we explore in those spaces of trust, our habits of relating, our habits of advising each other, when you hear that from someone else, our habit of advising reveals its shadow side. And there's a logic to it. There's a logic to fixing someone else when they come. Logic works like this. If you take my advice, you will solve your problem, and it will not be my responsibility. If you take my advice, but fail to solve your problem, you didn't try hard enough, and it's not my responsibility. And if you fail to take my advice, well, I did the best I could. But no matter how things come out, I don't have to worry about you or your vexing problem. I don't have to feel the difficulty of knowing your challenge, your suffering. The shadow behind those fixes is a desire to hold each other at bay. It's a strategy for abandoning each other while appearing to be concerned. When you speak about your deepest questions, you don't want to be fixed or saved. You want to be seen and heard. To have your truth, your experience acknowledged and honored. And if your problem is soul deep, your soul alone knows what you need to do about it. And my presumptuous advice is just going to drive your shy soul back into the woods again. The best service we render each other when you speak about a struggle like that is just to hold it and hear it so that you can hear your own inner teacher. And that is, of course, not an unlimited obligation that you have to everyone in your life. You don't have to hear every single person into speech. But there are times and places and relationships where you can make that sort of an agreement to hold and hear, to share vulnerably and listen deeply without fixing or saving. It's not therapy, though it's therapeutic, and it's not finding solutions, though sometimes solutions appear unbidden. It is fundamentally a spiritual practice, that work of deep listening. Spiritual practice, not ego or judgment or planning. Spiritual practice, empathy. Going deep quickly like that is a learned skill, and it changes the way that you can engage with the world. You can't grow a soul on your own, I don't think. It takes community. It takes other people to hear you into speech. And you can't lower your guard and remove your masks in theory. It's got to be embodied and real. We don't find depth in the abstract. It takes practice, listening and silence and time and space. Tending the garden of our spirit. Not doing it 100% of the time in every moment, but returning again and again to the people around us, to the fact, the reality, the complexity, the unsolvable problems that we all are to each other. Amen. Let's sing together. Will you rise in body or spirit? Robin's going to lead us in number 1012, When I'm Frightened.
When I am frightened, will you reassure me? When I'm uncertain, will you hold my hand? Will you be strong for me? Sing to me
This month, our offering goes to Boulder Food Rescue, or BFR. Gail Frommett will explain the Boulder Food Rescue.
Thank you. It's been great to be here. I'm leaving with a very full heart. And now I have an opportunity to talk about something near and dear to my heart, which is Boulder Food Rescue. In a nutshell, we're an organization trying to create a more just and sustainable food system. As you may know, we live in a country where we throw away 40% of the food that we raise. And in Colorado alone, 1 in 8 children go hungry. Boulder Food Rescue is trying to change this. In 2011, 5 young people, a bunch of college students, decided to make a difference, and they started this organization. And I jumped in about 6 months later when the Daily Camera did an article on what they're doing. I said, this is the greatest idea I've ever heard. What we do is we take food that would have been thrown away, fresh fruits and vegetables, and we take it by bicycle to people in need in our community. What a great concept. Not only are we feeding the hungry, saving the planet, but we're doing it in a way that really respects other people. Since 2012, we started out using our own bicycles and donated baby carriers to haul food. And since that time, we've grown to 170 volunteers with 20 donors, serving 43 no-cost grocery programs and giving fresh food to 7,000 people in our community. Since 2012, we have diverted 5 million pounds of food that would have gone to the landfill, produced methane and waste, into the bellies of people around us. So if you want to be a part of this wonderful change, contact us. When you see a food rescuer out there with our trailers, honk your horn. Contact us. Look at boulderfoodrescue.org for more information. Being a part of us doesn't mean you have to carry boxes of potatoes. I know as my hair got grayer and the loads got bigger, I found other ways to contribute. But you can be a part of making change in your community right here, right now. Over the next 3 Sundays, you'll hear from Sean Kohler, who's going to tell you in more detail exactly how we do this. But if you can't wait until next Sunday, at the public library, there is a photo exhibit of the faces of food access in our community. Go check it out. But anyway, give us a honk, give us your attention. I'll be waiting with Jim after the service to answer any questions. But thank you for your time.
I invite you to give as generously as you can. For those online, you can use the QR code or find the link in the video description. For those gathered in person, you can scan the QR code or make a donation as the ushers now pass the baskets. Make our gifts be used to enact justice and bring peace and love to the Boulder community and food to those who need it.
after the service at 12:30 today, if you're interested in exploring membership here or connecting more deeply, you're warmly invited, even if you did not RSVP, to come to a Finding Yourself at UCB class, 12:30 to 2. Rachel and I lead in the Emerson room. There's a very tasty lunch involved also. But before all that, and before the 10,000 things of life in the week ahead, we close with the words from the poet, who says, "I've been watching stars rely on the darkness they resist. Still, I keep retelling what happens till it comes out the way I want. May we unravel the story we tell ourselves and discover the story we are in, the one that keeps telling us." Amen. And go in peace. Will you rise? We'll close in song.